Hey, the ground you hit is the foundation you build on. You know what nobody warns you about when you're falling? That the impact, that moment when everything shatters, might be the most honest thing that ever happens to you. I recently sat down with someone whose name deserves to be said with reverence, Shirley Brown. If you don't know her, you should. She spent decades in the trenches of community care and advocacy across rural Connecticut, rewriting what it means to transform devastation into liberation. Shirley Brown doesn't do surface level inspiration. She does the deep, uncomfortable, transformative work that saves lives and rebuilds communities from the ground up. Her wisdom isn't theory, it's lived, tested, and proven in the stories of people who were drowning until someone threw them a lifeline. And what Shirley shared with me, what we unpacked together, it's the kind of truth that doesn't just inform you, it rewires you. Because here's what we've been sold: pain is something to push through, to get over, to bury beneath productivity and performance. And that relentless grind culture we've been conditioned to worship like it's a religion. But Shirley Brown's work, the lives she's touched, the systems she's helped rebuild, they all point to something radically different. Pain isn't the enemy, isolation is. And when we learn to transform our pain into passion, when we stop suffering in silence and start building together, that's when the revolution begins. Let me tell you about Ellen Ebbs. Ellen was living her life in Litchfield. She was managing, keeping it together, doing what so many of us do, moving through the days, checking the boxes, maintaining the facade of having it all under control. And then one day, she fell. Not metaphorically, literally. A serious fall that left her disabled, dependent, and sinking into a depression so deep she couldn't see daylight anymore. Suddenly, the woman who had been taking care of herself, taking care of others, managing her own life with dignity and independence, couldn't even get to the grocery store, couldn't make it to a doctor's appointment, couldn't remember what it felt like to be connected to her own community. Ellen's world shrank, her independence evaporated, and the isolation, that crushing, suffocating isolation, it nearly destroyed her. Ellen became a client of Chore Service, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting vulnerable adults who are fighting, often invisibly, to maintain their independence. And here's where the story shifts. Because Chore Service didn't just provide Ellen with rides, they didn't just help her pick up groceries or get to appointments. They gave her something far more valuable, something that can't be measured in services rendered or boxes checked. They gave her a network, a support system, a reason to believe that her story wasn't over. It was just entering a new, unexpected chapter. Through Chore Service, Ellen received non medical support, transportation, assistance with daily tasks, social connection, and slowly, steadily, Ellen began to rebuild. She regained her independence, her mental health improved, she reconnected with her community, she started showing up at local events again. Her recovery was celebrated, and her story became a beacon for others who were struggling in silence, too afraid or too ashamed to ask for help. Ellen's story is a perfect illustration of what Shirley Brown helped me understand. Transforming pain into passion isn't some abstract feel good nonsense you see on motivational posters. It's practical, it's possible, and it starts with one simple revolutionary act that most of us are terrified to do: asking for help. But let's be honest for a second. Asking for help, for those of us who've been conditioned to be the strong one, the reliable one, the one who holds everyone else together, that feels like failure. It feels like weakness. It feels like we are betraying some unspoken contract we signed when we decided to be high achieving, capable, independent women who don't need anybody. Shirley Brown's work challenges that narrative head on, because what Ellen's story teaches us, what the work of Chore Service demonstrates every single day, is that support systems aren't a luxury. They're not a participation trophy for people who can't hack it. They are the difference between surviving and thriving, between isolation and community, between pain that destroys you and pain that transforms you into something stronger, something more connected, something more human. Now, let's talk about what happens when the support system itself is under threat. Chore Service, the very organization that saved Ellen's life, faced its own existential crisis. Federal funding cuts threatened to dismantle the services that so many vulnerable community members depended on. Jane McLaren and Dolores Parati, the leaders of this nonprofit, could have thrown up their hands. They could have said, "We tried, the system failed us. There's nothing more we can do." But they didn't. Instead, they rallied. They mobilized donors. They organized fundraising events. They told stories like Ellen's to anyone who would listen, to anyone with a heart and a checkbook. They turned their organizational pain, their funding crisis, their very real fear of losing everything they'd built into passionate, relentless advocacy. And it worked. They expanded transportation services. They sustained assistance for clients. They kept the doors open for the people on what they call the fragile list, those who are one setback, one missed meal, one broken connection away from losing their independence entirely. This is what Shirley Brown means when she talks about turning pain into passion. It's not just individual transformation, it's collective action. It's taking the hurt, the setback, the disappointment, the fear, and refusing to let it be the end of the story. It's saying, "This broke me, but it will not break us." And then there's Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy, the first selectman of Roxbury, an incoming chair of chore service, looked at his community and saw people slipping through the cracks. He saw residents on the verge of losing their independence because the resources simply weren't there, because the safety net had holes big enough for entire lives to fall through. So Patrick created something called the Fragile List, a targeted, proactive approach to care management that identified the most at risk individuals and coordinated interventions before they reached crisis point. Think about that for a second. Before crisis point, not after someone fell, not after someone ended up in the hospital or lost their home. Before. Patrick Roy's approach was preventive, compassionate, and deeply personal. He didn't wait for people to hit rock bottom. He built a foundation before the ground gave way. The Fragile List became a model. Other rural communities started adopting similar strategies. Patrick Roy's personal commitment to community care, born from witnessing the struggles of marginalized residents, rippled outward. His approach didn't just help dozens of people maintain their quality of life. It inspired other leaders to rethink how they serve their most vulnerable populations. It sparked conversations about proactive care, about dignity, about what it means to truly see the people in your community who are struggling in silence. This is the ripple effect Shirley Brown talked about during our conversation. When you turn your pain into passion, when you transform your personal struggle into purposeful action, you don't just change your own life, you become a beacon. Your story, your work, your refusal to let adversity have the final word, it gives other people permission to do the same. It creates a permission structure for healing, for asking for help, for believing that transformation is possible. But here's where I want to get vulnerable with you for a moment, because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, "That's beautiful. That's inspiring. But I'm so tired. I've been strong for so long. I've been carrying everyone. I've been the one people lean on. And I don't know if I have anything left to give." And to that, I want to say this as clearly and as firmly and as lovingly as I possibly can. Softness is not weakness. Rest is not failure. And asking for support is not betrayal. The soft girl era isn't about abandoning responsibility or checking out of your life. It's not about becoming irresponsible or selfish or disconnected. It's about recognizing that you cannot pour from an empty cup. It's about understanding that the superwoman cape you've been wearing, that heavy, suffocating thing you've been dragging around for years, it's okay to take it off. It's okay to say, I need help. It's okay to admit that you're tired. It's okay to rest without guilt, without apology, without explanation. Shirley Brown's work, the stories of Ellen, of Chore Service, of Patrick Roy, they all point to the same fundamental truth. We are not meant to do this alone. Community care isn't just a nice idea, it's not a luxury for people with extra time and resources. It's a survival strategy. It's how we break cycles of trauma. It's how we build resilience. It's how we transform pain into something that doesn't just heal us, but heals the people around us and the systems we're part of. So let me ask you something, and I want you to sit with this question for a moment. What pain are you carrying right now that you've been trying to handle on your own? What setback, what disappointment, what hurt have you been white knuckling your way through because you think asking for help makes you weak? What weight are you carrying that was never meant to be carried alone? Here's your challenge. And I'm giving this to you with all the love and all the firmness I can muster. Identify one area of personal pain or adversity in your life right now. Just one. You don't have to fix everything, you don't have to have it all figured out. Just one thing. And then seek out a support system. It could be a mentor, it could be a professional network, it could be a community resource like Chore Service, it could be a therapist, a support group, a trusted friend who's been waiting for you to let them in. It could be a faith community, a recovery group, an online forum of people who understand what you're going through. Take the first step toward turning your pain into passion. Not because you have to have a perfect plan, not because you need to know exactly how it's going to work out, but because you deserve support. You deserve community. You deserve to transform your struggle into something meaningful, something purposeful, something that doesn't just survive, but thrives. Shirley Brown reminded me during our conversation that healing isn't linear. It's messy. It's uncomfortable. It requires us to be vulnerable in ways that feel absolutely terrifying. But on the other side of that vulnerability, that's where the magic happens. That's where pain becomes passion. That's where isolation becomes community. That's where survival becomes a story worth telling, worth sharing, worth building a life around. Ellen Ebbs didn't just recover from her fall, she became an inspiration to her entire community. Chore Service didn't just survive a funding crisis, they became a model for resilient, community centered care that other organizations are now replicating. Patrick Roy didn't just help a few people on a list, he sparked a movement that's changing how rural communities think about care, dignity, and proactive support. And you have that same potential. Your pain, your setback, your struggle, it's not the end of your story, it's the foundation. It's the ground you needed to hit so you could finally understand what it means to rise, not alone, but together. Not in spite of your pain, but because of what you chose to do with it. So here's what I want you to remember: transforming pain into passion is possible. Support systems matter more than you've been taught to believe. And your journey, messy and imperfect and unfinished as it is, can impact others in ways you can't even imagine yet. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be healed completely. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to ask for help, willing to build community, willing to believe that your pain can become your purpose, that your struggle can become your strengths, that your story deserves to be told and heard and honored. Because the truth is, we're all Ellen Ebbs at some point. We all fall. We all face moments where we can't do it alone, where the weight is too much, where the ground comes up to meet us harder than we ever expected. And the question isn't whether you'll fall. The question is, will you let someone help you back up? Will you reach out? Will you build the network that catches you? Will you become part of the network that catches someone else? Shirley Brown's work proves that when we reach out, when we build networks of care and support and radical compassion, we don't just change individual lives, we change communities, we change systems, we change the world, one connection, one act of courage, one moment of vulnerability at a time. So here's my final challenge to you: take off the cape, ask for help, find your support system, build your fragile list of people who will catch you when you fall. And then, when you're ready, become someone else's safety net. Because that's how we break the cycle. That's how we turn pain into passion. That's how we build a world where no one has to suffer alone. Your soft girl era is waiting. And it starts the moment you decide that your pain deserves to become your passion, your struggle deserves to become your strength, and your story deserves to be the foundation someone else builds their hope on. The ground you hit can become the foundation you build on, but only if you're brave enough to ask for help getting back up. Only if you're willing to let someone see you at your lowest and still believe you're worthy of support. Only if you refuse to let isolation win. So go, reach out, build your network, transform your pain, and watch what happens when you stop trying to survive alone and start learning to thrive together. The world is waiting for the version of you that rises from the ground, not in spite of the fall, but because of everything you learned on the way down.